Good afternoon. We'd like to ask everyone to please take their seat so we can start on time.
Letter from Patrick Cunningham from Holly County. Not now. I have the.
You have the other
one he sent.
Yeah. I'll make sure.
Just do something.
Investigate. Yeah. When we take a break, I'll shoot a note over to Teresa to email it to you.
It doesn't have to.
I won't remember. Well, I will, but it'll be like, 3 o'clock in the morning next Tuesday.
I don't have to have it now. Can you tell me the next Tuesday?
Leslie? She's right here.
Okay, bang the gavel.
Good afternoon. We're ready to begin, everyone. Please take your seats. Leslie. Right here, Leslie.
Take advanced mute.
Okay, they're quieting down, Tom, so now's your chance.
Am I starting?
Yeah, I think you should start.
This is your place.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ted Cook. I'm the General Manager of the Central Arizona Project. I'd like to welcome everyone here to CAP headquarters for the first meeting of the Arizona Lower Basin Drought Contingency Plan, or LBDCP, Steering Committee meeting, number 1. And my co-chair, Tom Bishotsky, Director of ADWR, and I would like to welcome all the delegates, alternates that are in the audience. Everyone, thank you so much for coming here. We believe we've built a lot of momentum so far in the meetings that we've had starting last month, and today will be no exception, I don't think. I would like to provide some logistical information first. This microphone system, of course, it's a new microphone system that we never tried out before. In a meeting like this, only 3 microphones can be on at one time. And so that doesn't prevent people from pushing the little face with the noise coming out of it on the control panel, but that will shut someone else off. So, and that is likely to be... That is likely to be me or Tom. So please don't do that. And we'll try and be as informal as possible to acknowledge folks to turn on their microphone. And Kathy, you have your microphone on right now, I see. Yeah, there you go. So after you're acknowledged, everyone, please get in the practice of turn on your mic, say what you have to say, and when you're done, turn it off, and that will prevent any kind of unexpected technological glitches. The restrooms, for people who are wondering, are right over here. So you go out any of the doors along that side wall and walk that way, and those are the restrooms. There are drinking fountains and things like that. There's a soda machine down there and other things for that. If there are people who are standing in the back, we had reserved the first couple of rows for staff to the delegates. But I think it's probably safe enough now that we've got, it looks like about 10 or 12 chairs that people can move up. You don't need to stand. We also have overflow, I believe, across the hall in the back here, that if you can't fit in this room, this proceedings is being piped into there and you can watch from the other room rather than stand in the back. I think that was all that we had to cover with respect to logistics.
So I want to reiterate my thanks to everyone for attending and for being willing to participate in this process. We have a very aggressive schedule over the next few months, a lot of work to do to try to achieve the ultimate outcome of the steering committee. Briefly, I'll go over the agenda. You can see it up on the screens, and I think we've made packets available to folks around the table at least. So we're in the middle of welcoming introductions. We'll talk a little bit about the process. We have a break in here early on. We probably will not take it where it is in the agenda. Ted and I will play it by ear a little bit to have the break at the appropriate time. We'll talk about the framework for implementing the DCP in Arizona, an overview of the 4 key elements, some next steps, and an opportunity for the call to the public. So with that, I will now ask the delegates around the table to introduce themselves and their alternates who they've assigned, who they represent, and also the sector that they are representing. So I will start to my right.
David Godleski, Southern Arizona Home Builders Association, representing the development sector. Dennis Rule is our alternate.
John Kamik, Town of Marana Water Department. I'm representing Pima County Ag and the Southern Arizona Water Users Association. I am the alternate for Brian Wong of BKW Farms, representing the Ag sector.
Stephanie Smallhouse, President of Arizona Farm Bureau, here representing the agriculture industry, and our alternate is Chelsea McGuire.
Virginia O'Connell, Arizona Water Banking Authority, and my alternate is Terry Subrasi.
Wade Noble, Yuma County Agriculture Water Coalition. The alternate is Megan Scott.
Paul Orm. I serve as general.
The other one.
Paul Orm. I'm general counsel to 4 Pinell County irrigation districts. I'm representing Pinell County Agriculture, and my alternate is Dan Jones.
Lois Wakimoto, Chair for Mojave County Water Authority, Mojave County Supervisor, and I'm representing Mojave County, and my alternate is Jamie Kelly.
Joe Olson, General Manager of Metro Water District. Under the municipal sector, my alternate is Wally Wilson.
Bill Garfield, I'm President of Arizona Water Company, representing the municipal provider sector. My alternate is Fred Schneider, Vice President of Engineering for Arizona Water Company.
Despite what the sign says, I am Troy Day, Epcor Water. I am the alternate. Joe Geisel, President of Epcor Water, is the primary.
Javier Sedovich, City of Goodyear. Our alternate is Dan Cotterman, and represent the municipal sector.
I am not Brian Biesmeiser. I'm Kathy Rawl from the City of Scottsdale. I'm the alternate. Brian Biesmeier is the delegate. We are representing the municipal sector.
I'm Tim Tomier, Director of Tucson Water, representing the municipal sector, and my alternate is Andrew Greenhill of the City of Tucson.
Good afternoon. My name is Laura Grignano. I'm the manager of the Central Arizona Groundwater Replenishment District. My alternate is Perry Benamelis, manager of the CAGRD Water Supply Program, and we are representing the CAGRD.
Shane Leonard, General Manager, Roosevelt Water Conservation District, representing Ag, and my alternate is Brad Strader.
Good afternoon. My name is Stephen Rowe Lewis. I know we have agricultural, municipal, and tribal interests here, and I'm here specifically representing tribal interests, and I am the governor of the Gila River Indian Community, and my alternate is Councilman Marlon Dixon, who is here in the audience. Thank you.
Cheryl Lombard, President of Valley Partnership. My alternate is John Graham of Sunbelt Holdings. We're representing the development industry.
Good afternoon. I'm Ted Maxwell, the president of the Southern Arizona Leadership Council. We're representing the economic development sector. My alternate is Kip Volpe with the Estes Corporation, and we both are members of the Tucson Regional Water Coalition as well.
My name is Dennis Patch. I'm chairman of the Colorado River Indian Tribes, representing the Colorado River Indian Tribes. My alternate is Keith Moses, vice chairman.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Anthony Francisco, sitting in for Chairman Edward Manuel. I'm on the Legislative Council representative, sitting as a vice chairman of our Water Resource Committee.
Good afternoon. I'm Sandy Favorites from Freeport McMoran, representing industry, and my alternate is Richard Bark.
Good afternoon. My name is Ted Kowalski, and I represent the Walton Family Foundation, and I lead their Colorado River Initiative. Thank you for including us. I represent the NGO community, and my alternate is Kevin Moran of Environmental Defense Fund.
Good. Good afternoon. My name is Dave Roberts, and I represent Salt River Project, and we're here on behalf of SRP, and my alternate is Chuck Podolak.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Rosanna Gavaldon, Arizona State Representative for Legislative District 2, and so that's part of Southern Arizona. And my alternate is State Representative Kirsten Engel.
Thank you. I apologize for walking in late. I was over at ADWR, so my apologies. My name is Senator Lisa Otondo, and I represent Legislative District 4. My alternate is Senator Andrea D'Alessandro.
I'm Senator Gail Griffin. I represent District 14, and I'm the chairman of the Senate Natural Resource, Energy, and Water Committee, and my alternate is Jeff Cross.
I'm Representative Rusty Bowers. I represent District 25 in the Arizona Legislature, and my alternate on this endeavor is Mr. David Cook, Representative Cook, who's with us today.
Good afternoon. Glenn Hammer, Arizona Chamber of Commerce and Industry.
Good afternoon. I'm Lisa Atkins, president of the Central Arizona Project Board, and my alternate is Karen Caesar, who's also a board member.
No.
Oh, I'm sorry. Karen Caesar. My alternate is my alternate is Jim Hallway, who's the vice president of the CAP board. Karen, your turn.
Okay. Sorry about that, but yeah, hi, I'm Karen Caesar, a CAP board member representing Pima County, and my alternate is Mark Taylor.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Hunter Moore. I work for Governor Ducey. I'm representing the Office of the Governor.
Good afternoon. My name is Leslie Myers. I'm here representing the United States Bureau of Reclamation, and my alternate is Lisa Lance with the Department of Interior Solicitor's Office.
Would also like to announce, it's not on the sheet that's in the packet, but Chairman, Co-Chair Director Bushatsky and I do have alternates, even though we are co-chairs, and if one of us is not available, that's what the other one is here for, and we will alternate chairman duties. But we also have alternates, so that if one of us is absent, we will have somebody else filling in for us. And my alternate is Suzanne Tickner, Director of Water Policy for CAP.
And my alternate is Clint Chandler, Assistant Director for DWR.
We would also like to recognize, in addition to the elected officials that we have around the table, other elected officials that we're aware of, this is always a dangerous thing to do because we hope not to leave anyone out. Other elected officials that have joined us today, we really appreciate them all being here. It includes Senator Sina Kerr, Representative David Cook, who was pointed out before. We also have some tribal elective representative here, council member from the Colorado River Indian Tribe, Bobby Page is here, We also need to switch some papers. We also have Adam Andrews from the Tona'atam Sanavir District is here. He's the vice chairman of the Alati Association. And Marlon Dixon, who is on the Gila River Indian Community Council. And also a couple more of our CAWCD board members are here. Mr. Pat Jacobs from Pima County, and also Alexander Arboleda from Maricopa County. Hope I didn't forget anyone else. We'd also like to welcome Jack Jackson from Congressman O'Halloran's office is with us today. Thanks, everyone, for your interest and for coming. Ready to switch? So we'd like to start with a few words to reiterate what we have communicated in the last two meetings that we had in June and earlier this month. Why LBDCP is important to Arizona. And these points were made primarily in the first meeting at the end of July. There is an increased risk of Lake Mead reaching critically low elevations without additional action. That the actions that were prescribed in the 2007 guidelines are not going to be sufficient. The risk due to continued drought in the upper basin primarily has increased significantly since the guidelines were put into place, and the LBDCP is designed to reduce that risk back down to a more acceptable level. Collective action is needed, and the DCP is one way to get collective action among all of the basin states. So we refer to the LBDCP, the lower basin DCP. There is an upper basin DCP as well. So all 7 basin states are engaged in this effort. The United States, the Republic of Mexico under Minute 323, if we get this work done, will activate additional cuts in Mexico as well and reduce the risk for everyone. And then lastly, the risk for shortage is sooner and sooner as early as 2020. I'd like to refer to you for a moment to the graphs that the Bureau of Reclamation showed at our June meeting. This is elevation 1020 in Lake Mead when the lake is roughly 22% full. The graph on the left represents the historical full hydrology from the beginning of the last century until now, and shows that the gray on the bottom there, again, just to remind everybody, shows what the measured modeled risk was at the time the guidelines were put into place. The green line shows that it has increased significantly, and that with DCP, that risk is reduced by about 2/3, much closer to where it was anticipated to be when the guidelines were done. On the right is a more conservative hydrology. We call it the stress test hydrology, and that we are using for the modeling now, in addition to the full hydrology, and shows that the risk of shortage by 2026, when the guidelines end, it approaches 50%, but implementing the DCP will reduce that by about 3/4.
So now we'll turn to a discussion of the mission of the steering committee, and that is to discuss and recommend how to adopt and implement the Lower Basin Drought Contingency Plan in a way that is acceptable to Arizona water users. I think you already know that DWR and CAP have established a steering committee to achieve that mission, and that CAWCD and DWR are working as the co-chairs. We really talked about this mission already at both our June 28th and July 10th meetings, and described it then as to discuss and recommend how to adopt and implement the Lower Basin Drought Contingency Plan in a way that is acceptable to Arizona water users. So again, referring back to the previous slide that Ted just went through, under the stress test hydrology, there is almost a 1 in 2 chance of Lake Mead falling below elevation 1020 before 2026 without the drought contingency plan. And the Lower Basin Drought Contingency Plan significantly reduces the risk of Lake Mead falling below 1020. We do have a limited window of time before the 2019 Arizona legislative session to take the steps necessary to adopt and implement the Lower Basin Drought Contingency Plan. So again, we have a lot of work and a short time to get there. So, the steering committee objectives. We are seeking broad commitment and support for the implementation of the Drought Contingency Plan in Arizona. We want to recommend appropriate and sustainable processes and tools to achieve the implementation of the Lower Basin Development Drought Contingency Plan in Arizona, and again, to obtain the approval by the Arizona legislature of a joint resolution authorizing the director of DWR to agree to the Drought Contingency Plan. So, again, I think most folks are familiar with those objectives from our past discussions as well. So we wanted to talk about some proposed sideboards. Hopefully these sideboards will make this process as efficient as possible and help us all have some robust discussions as we work through a lot of very difficult issues. So first, we want to focus on the adoption and implementation of the Lower Basin Drought Contingency Plan in Arizona. We want to avoid bringing in topics that are not relevant to or essential for the developing and implementation plan for the Lower Basin Development, the Lower Basin Drought Contingency Plan in Arizona. We understand there are a lot of tangents to the issues, but we don't have the time to go off into issues that are not related to the Drought Contingency Plan. We want to operate within and respect existing legal authorities, contracts, and priorities. This means working within existing authorities, contracts, and priorities, not replacing those with some other new rules. New agreements may be developed that are consistent with existing authorities, contracts, priorities, and that are mutually acceptable to impacted parties. Third, we want to seek solutions that acknowledge that the impacts of a reduced supply differ among water users. This process is designed to partially mitigate the incremental impacts of the Drought Contingency Plan on Arizona water users. Notwithstanding the benefits of the Drought Contingency Plan, due to reductions in risks to some Arizona water users, nobody should seek to improve the position therein without the Drought Contingency Plan through this process. We ask people to please respect the steering committee process and each other. The delegates should not undermine the integrity of the process by disrespecting other delegates or denigrating the work of the steering committee or the work we are doing, especially outside the room or with the media. Debates and disagreements, we ask, should be handled respectfully at the steering committee meetings. And while CAP and DWR are jointly leading the process, the input, ideas, questions, and dialogue from the delegates and public is vital to and welcome. We ask the public to participate with questions and comments regarding the agenda items and delegate discussion during the public comment period. DWR and CAP will lead the discussions at each meeting and will answer questions, provide technical information, and highlight unresolved issues for the benefit of the committee. Please be sure to share your thoughts with us. It is important that DWR and CAP and other members of the committee to know where you stand in order for this process to be successful. In our last sideboard, we need to come to an agreement of appropriate documentation of the proceedings, and this is somewhat of an action item for us today. So we'll note that at the first meeting, we are recording these proceedings and intend to post the recording. Going forward, we want to hear your views among the committee about continuing down that path on recording these meetings and posting them, or if you think there's some other alternative that would still work for all of us to be able to memorialize what we're talking about and for the public to follow what is going on. So are folks comfortable in the committee with having these proceedings recorded and posting them on DWR and CAWCD's website after the fact? And I'm seeing virtually all heads shaking yes. So for the record, I think we have good support and agreement that that will help move this process forward. So we will continue that process in our next meetings of recording and posting.
Director, will that include posting the handouts as well?
Yes, and actually the handouts that we have today that we're showing on the screen were posted, I believe, by both organizations at 12:30 this morning so that folks could have a chance to see them as they walked in. We had put the specific site on that first slide as folks walked in, so if you wanted to use your computers and call them up, that would be available to everybody. And we'll continue that practice of posting them a little bit before the meetings begin. So we'll move back now to Ted.
We'd like to spend a little time on the role of the delegates. I think we've heard some this morning from the delegates themselves about the sectors that they are representing in addition to their own organization. But Tom and I would just like to expand a little bit on what our expectations are and make sure that we're all on the same page. And if you have any ideas about should we be doing this or should we be doing that, let's get that straightened out here too. As I just alluded to, we would ask the delegates to do a broader job than just represent their own agency, but to be a resource for the people in their sector and even outside their sector to exchange information from what goes on here and collect feedback from the folks that are in your sector and in the community, so that can be part of this conversation right here. Again, reaching out to the members of your constituency to make sure they're aware of what is going on here. We're doing the best we can to publicize the time and location of these meetings. We'll get to that more in a minute, and to stay and keep those people well informed. And bring back input from your constituency to the steering committee for consideration during its deliberations. We see that we've got a full house again today, like the other two meetings. There's lots of engaged, enthusiastic, smart, talented people, and we'd love to have a bigger table than we already have and include everyone directly in the conversation, but it's just impossible to do. And we've received a lot of queries from folks about, is there more room on the steering committee? Can we add this person or that person? And sadly, we have to tell those people, no, the committee is as big as it can get. But those people have a role to play too. Please engage with your delegates and be the other half of this equation that we're describing here, so that we can be as effective as possible. Some of that has already begun. I know, for instance, that the Bureau of Reclamation has already started a tribal stakeholder process for broader tribal representation. That type of thing has already happened. We've already received correspondence that has included not only Tom and I as co-chairs, but the delegates for a particular sector, so that those people are wrapped in. So this is already happening, and don't rely 100% just on the folks that are at the table. You're all here because you're interested. You have a job to do too. CWCD and ADWR during the course of the proceedings are going to come up with ideas, as Director Bruszowski said before, and proposals and things like that. And we expect similar types of feedback to come from the delegates, not just yay or nay to what we say, but to incorporate your ideas and concepts and proposals into this as well. And another role of the delegates, as we talked about before, is to attend as many of these meetings as possible. And that the reason for having an alternate is so that if any one of you cannot be here, that there is someone who is up to speed, and that's part of your job too, to keep your alternate up to speed if they're not able to attend. And I see many alternates are here today. Thank you very much. So that we will always have somebody ready to fill that chair. We would ask, however, that only the designated alternate be a fill-in. We do not want, unfortunately, to have a kind of revolving chair where somebody different shows up every time, because it's really difficult for everybody else to kind of catch those people up. So that's why it's limited to 2 per delegate chair, the principal and the alternate. And then the meetings are approximately every 2 weeks. We've got a slide on that in a minute. As we all know, a 2-week schedule is a treadmill, and it's at a fast speed, and there's going to be a lot of work that needs to happen in between each meeting, not just logistically for me and Tom and our staff to do, but for all of you as delegates to be working with your constituents and your own agency to get that done. This is, we can only go as fast as the slowest person, so everybody has got incumbent upon them to do their homework, complete their action item, their assignments, and things like that so that we can all move forward as quickly as possible. As Director Bushowski said, we have a limited amount of time to do this, and the lake is going down while we're doing it. I think that was the last bullet on that page. So here is the draft schedule for the meetings. We published this last week. I think most of these days are Thursday afternoons. There's one exception. I don't recall off the top of my head which one that is. It may be October 11th is a Wednesday. And what this is it's every 2 weeks, except we skip the week that Labor Day is in, and we skip the week that Thanksgiving is in. Other than that, it's every 2 weeks. But those are the schedules. We do not have locations yet identified for all of them. The most critical one is August 9th. I'm working very hard to get that one identified, and we'll let folks know as soon as possible. Do we have a question?
Yeah. Ted, I believe on the list, the October 11th is supposed to be the 10th, and I think that's the Wednesday. That's based on previous correspondence.
Okay. We may have a typo here. We'll get that validated before the end of the meeting, if that's a mistake. I know there was one Wednesday, so there's some. Thank you, Tim, for your calendar function for pointing that out to us, and we'll check and see if that's correct. Back to Tom.
So we'll have a little bit of discussion now about implementing the drought contingency plan. So we're introducing kind of a new term here in this first bullet, Tier 0. So again, under the 2007 guidelines, there's Tier 1, tier at 1075, Tier 2, 1050, Tier 3 at 1025. The drought contingency plan adds an additional layer, starting at elevation 1090 and going to 1075. Again, a reduction for Arizona in that tier, which we're now calling Tier 0 of 192,000 acre feet. But in looking at what's happening on the river and the modeling and projecting forward, before the end of the interim period, the end of the guidelines, 2026, 2019 may well be the last year in which we are in the condition of Tier 0 and not already moving into Tier 1. And so we just wanted to share that information with you because I think it might be pertinent to how folks are going to be impacted and what tools might be available to us to, again, partially mitigate those impacts. And we also may need to have some discussion. So let me go to the next one. So there may be some processes or mechanisms that will focus primarily on the Tier 0 years, but we don't anticipate that will consume a lot of the steering committee's time. Oops. What did I do here? Did I go backwards or am I going forwards? So again, we also recognize that one of the issues that will occur when we get below 1075 will be within each year that there will be water ordered by folks that have Colorado River water delivered to them, whether on the river or within CAP, that won't be taken, and we'll need to address the disposition of that water as well. Even though if we're not in Tier 0, what we've known traditionally as other excess water will essentially be gone as soon as we go below 1075. So we wanted to review a bit the reductions and the contributions under the guidelines and the drought contingency plan. So again, Tier 0 starting at elevation 1090. So again, if the drought contingency plan was in place today, we would already be implementing the 192,000 acre foot cut, what we're calling Tier 0. Tier 1 at 1075, we add in 320,000 acre feet. So the total reduction to Arizona would be 512,000 acre feet. At Tier 2, another addition So we now would total 592,000 acre feet. And then at 1045, another addition, making the nut for Arizona 640,000 acre feet. And again, part of the reason that 1045 is in there specifically is, again, that's potentially where California obligations and contributions start to kick in at 1045. And then Tier 3, 720,000 acre feet total for Arizona at 1025. So again, reminding folks yet again, the central focus of this steering committee will be how best to adopt and implement the job contingency plan, basically how to deal with those various reductions at various elevations and the impacts they're going to impose upon the end users of Colorado River water. So we're starting from the place that reductions under the job contingency plan will occur in priority order within Arizona, and Ted will go through some of this in more detail. We've done some of this in the past couple of meetings. However, and this is really the important part, and this is really the work largely of this committee and this process, alternative approaches that conform to the existing priority system to allow reductions in use of higher priority water to flow to lower priority water users and into Lake Mead may be developed. That will be a challenge. They need to be voluntary. They need to end up in a place where we can all be in agreement that these things make sense to help spread the benefits and the obligations across the water use sectors in the state. So that, again, is our main challenge.
We've included in the packet today for the delegates, and I think there are copies too for the audience of this, three graphic slides about the priorities in Arizona. It looks like this on the front that you can refer to, but we didn't want to be flipping back and forth on slides, so we took it out of the slide deck. So to build on the overall summary provided by Director Bushatsky of how DCP would work and be implemented in Arizona, would like to kind of peel through each of the priorities. The first water to go under DCP would be the lowest priority water on the river and within the CAP priority 4 water. So that would be the P5 water on river and the CAP other excess pool face reductions in what we're referring to as Tier 0, 1075 to 1090. That's the tier that we're in right now. And even though the other excess pool is not completely gone away, that in those deeper shortages below Tier 0, these essentially will be gone. That doesn't mean that one of these voluntary agreements among parties might not allow some water to flow to these folks. This is the work that we have to do while we're here. As I just said, below 1075, the pools are eliminated, not just under the DCP, but also under the guidelines, which the first tier reduction is 320,000 acre feet, and this other excess pool is much smaller than that. It'll essentially be gone below 1075 in either case. The next tier is the CAP agricultural pool is next to be reduced, and really it's hard to do this without shuffling a lot of paper, but the referring to the next 2 pages of the graphs in the handout between what happens under the guidelines and what happens under DCP differentially, and it's a little bit different to each pool within the CAP priority system, is a good way to see, well, what changes, what gets worse in most cases between the 2007 guidelines and the LBDCP for each pool. It's not the same for everybody, and this is a point that Director Bushatsky brought up before, is that we need to acknowledge that the impacts of DCP is not the same for everybody, and we need to probably do something to try and even that out a little bit better. So between 1075 and 1050, or what is the Tier 1 shortage, the ag pool supply goes from approximately 50% of its supply to none under DCP. Under a Tier 2 shortage, which is 1050 to 1025 feet, the ag pool goes from a small percentage of its supply under the guidelines of about 20% to none under the DCP. And in a Tier 3, the ag pool has no supply at all under either the DCP or the 2007 guidelines. So if you hold those two slides side by side, you can see that's where these numbers come from. The non-Indian ag priority pool, and I'll pause for a moment there and mention that only a portion of the non-Indian ag priority water that's available under the CAP master contract is allocated at this present time. It's about 250,000 acre feet, and it is allocated to 2 tribes and 7 M&I subcontractors. But that pool, and there's other allocations that are pending and other water that's available for future allocations. But for right now, we're really talking about who has this water today. Between 1075 and 1050 in a first-tier shortage, the NIA supply goes from a full supply under the 2007 guidelines to 80% under the Tier 1. So just implicated by about 20% reduction, differential reduction under DCP. However, between 1050 and 1025 in a Tier 2 shortage, the non-Indian ag priority pool goes from full to approximately 15 to 50%. So there's lots of variability in there as the lake drops from 1050 to 1025. The NIA pool disappears pretty rapidly. And then under a Tier 3 shortage, 1025 and below, the NIA supply goes from about 90%, almost full under the guidelines, to nothing under LBDCP. So pretty severe consequences for the NIA pool in addition to the ag pool. Next highest priority is the CAP Indian and M&I priority pools. They're co-equal. They're separate pools, but they're co-equal with each other as far as priority goes. And they are affected only at the deepest level of reduction under the DCP, which is below 1025. So those 2 priority pools are not affected by a Tier 1 or a Tier 2 shortage at current usage levels under either the 2007 guidelines or the LBDCP. So these 2 pools are, as I said, not affected until only the 3rd tier, when there's about a 10% reduction to those pools. So these really are the pools that have the least impact and the most benefit on a longer-term basis from the DCP of slowing the decline in the lake down before it gets to these lower levels. Here's a graphical representation of this, what we call the CAP priority stack. There's a picture of this in the handout that I referred to before. Highest priority at the bottom, there's a tiny amount of priority 3 water, tiny in relatively. And then the Indian and M&I priority pools side by side shown there. The non-Indian ag priority pool, the agricultural settlement pool, and then other excess at the top. The horizontal dashed line there represents the first tier shortage that would occur under DCP, which is the 320,000 under the guidelines plus an additional 192,000 acre feet under DCP. And these are examples. We've got that word up there on the slide on purpose. These are examples. There's lots of other, well, could this happen? Could that happen? There's lots of things that could happen. And this first representation here is probably the simplest ones. If we just were to take the Tier 1 shortage under DCP in priority order from lowest priority to highest, this is the way that it would look. As we said before, it would eliminate the other excess pool entirely. It would eliminate the ag pool entirely, and it would reduce the NIA priority pool by about 20% based on existing usage levels. So if we were to have DCP and just went strictly against in priority order, this is what it would look like. One of the questions that we need to resolve here is this the acceptable manner to implement DCP in Arizona? We don't know. Likely not, but that will be the discussion for this committee here. It's likely that we will have to come up with, as Director Buchowski said, a number of agreements among the parties about how to do this differently. And there's one example of many possible examples on the right here. And so what this represents is a situation where there have been some voluntary agreements by higher priority water users, which is represented by the blue sections in the top part of the graph, who have decided to do some conservation, either system conservation or intentionally created surplus, and make some water available to leave in Lake Mead. But in the course of doing so, the assumption in this graph is that there was a discussion among the lower priority water users who agreed that some of that water that was released or conserved by the higher priority users would be made available to lower priority users, and that's why there's a little bit of green ag pool being shown down there below the line, which is what's delivered. This is just one example of what could happen, but the key concept here is, as Director Buchowski said, all of the priority pools are going to have to agree that this is the way that this can work so that we can get the consensus to go to the legislature and get this program approved. How the exact mechanics of each agreement that will be done will differ from agreement to agreement, but the overall premise is, as we discussed before, is using the priority system, respecting the priority system to allow these type of transactions to happen. And we'll spend lots more time in subsequent meetings on this. So this is pretty heavy stuff. So before we move on, if there's anybody that wants to ask any questions about this, we can do that. Bill?
Yes, Ted, just one general question. So absent some secondary agreements to how to move water around within a reduction within a priority, is that just a proportional sharing of that cut to those priority users, or?
Yeah, I believe so. Yes, it's just pro rata.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. A question for Ted or Tom. On the M&I tribal or Indian priority and M&I priority, have all the contracts been updated so that that is the case? Because I thought there were still some outstanding contracts where there was a different sort of priority system within that pool.
There are some different priorities, and I know particularly associated with the tribal contracts.
Yes, that's what I was thinking.
The ones negotiated pursuant to settlements have different shortage sharing criteria.
Okay, thanks, Leslie. And if I may, just as a request, which might be helpful for some of us who are dealing with multiple entities within our sector, is there a document somewhere that lists all the subcontracts, subcontracts are easy, but all the contracts and where they fall in the relative priority system?
I'm sure there's some version of something like that, but certainly this would be something that would be useful for us to have. So we'll make sure that we have an updated version of that available. Unfortunately, the priority system that's depicted on this graph isn't all in one compact little place in a single document that says, here's how the priorities work. Some of it is here, some of it is there, some of it is here, some of it is there. But we can compile all that into something.
Thank you. I think that'd be really helpful for everybody to have and be able to see.
Okay.
A couple questions. Concerning some of the potential solutions that are out there, does it also include perhaps recovery of water already stored? Or say an M&I subcontractor who would otherwise forego deliveries to a lower priority user to actually take water from storage? Is that one of the potentials?
I'm sure Director Buchowski will expand upon this a little bit. If what you're talking about is firming, probably not, because we won't be getting down into those water bank firming. But certainly any other type of moving things around, respecting the priority system, will be something that we need to look at.
And the other thing is
something specific in
well, I was just looking at the different water, at least at the water bank, whatever's stored in the 3 different AMAs. Pinal, for example, has 1.4 million acre feet in storage, and whatever the regulatory limitations might be on using that water, it's certainly water that was intended to use in times of shortage. And if we're sort of creating sort of I'll call it a voluntary shortage, if you will, to keep a shortage from happening, sort of a reduction, that maybe that would be a reason. I know we're not changing existing agreements, and that's probably not the direction, but that was just a thought I had. And then the other thing is more of an observation. When we start talking about what we have to do to sort of forge some solutions here, it would be nice to know not just the percentages of water, of the delta between what would happen in the event of a shortage versus what would happen under DCP. It would be nice to know what the volume of water we're dealing with, so that we can see how that would shake out at the end of the day.
So I'll just add, Bill, that the Water Banking Authority has water stored for water management purposes. Maybe there's some flexibility there. I would suggest that you might sit with the Water Banking Executive Director, Virginia O'Connell, and maybe talk about your idea a little bit and maybe crystallize a proposal that might work. Again, knowing, though, that if you use that water for those purposes, it won't be there for other purposes, and there might be other implications for other obligations of the bank, but I think that might be something you can flesh out with Virginia.
And not to get too far ahead of your question either, Bill, but there are other considerations. For instance, state of Arizona, CWCD, ICS, there's about 300,000 acre feet in Lake Mead. That's a resource that's available us to use for some of these solutions. There's Lake Pleasant is relatively full as far as the operational space there. So there's those types of things that we need to consider too, that can be resources for us to do some of these agreements.
I'll make this my last comment on this, but there's also a time element to perhaps, and I'm not going to speak on behalf of Paul here to my left, but the ag pool water was scheduled to go down in 2024, I believe, to 225 and to 0 in 2030. So there's a time element to what solutions might be put on the table as it relates to try to mitigate the effects of that on the ag pool water. So I guess we have to bear that in mind. Whatever solutions that might be you might look at it on a long-term basis, it might seem imprudent, but to get through this time period through 2030, it might be at least something to consider. So, thank you.
That's a good point. Even though these graphs, for instance, as examples, appear to be a static thing, there might be something that are fixed quantities. There might be some things that are on a sliding scale. They might have some variable or index that we agree to use. But the whole purpose of this is to find something that will work, that gives all of us enough certainty that it will still work, needs to be sustainable in a couple, 3-4 years between now and 2026.
Chet, if there are individual contracts or arrangements that were more flexible than the rigidity, of the visual, how and when does that get worked out in order to put the plan together? I mean, is there some listing, or would various sectors bring that flexibility together?
Well, this forum is the main place where I think that work is to be done. But and as long as you brought it up, Representative Bowers, something that we didn't mention earlier is that we expect a fair amount of work to go on outside this room. And as we'll get to later in the agenda, there's one specific work group that has been going on that we're going to ask to come and present to the steering committee next time. So as proposals or ideas are generated outside of this room, we want them to be brought back here so that we can make sure that there's a thorough discussion. So I guess I'm not intending to be dismissive, but anywhere and everywhere that concepts can be generated about how to do some of these things, or all those ideas are welcome.
And it would be intuitive that a lot of that's probably already being done.
Some work has been done. Now, we didn't just start on any of this yesterday, even though this is the first meeting of the steering committee and only the third meeting in this round of discussions. A lot of work has been put into these concepts already.
And to add, Representative Bowers, DWR and CAWCD will work together addressing the resources that are under our purview, so to speak, to throw out some potential solutions as well. But we can't do it all ourselves. We don't have enough resources at our disposal to fully deal with those impacts. And like Ted said, we hope that others that have resources bring proposals to us. So we'll be both the chairs making proposals, but you all, with help from your constituencies out in the audience as well, coming forth with proposals. So we wanted to have a little bit of a discussion of what we see as the four essential elements for implementing the drought contingency plan. And those have been identified by DWR and CAWCD, and we're considering these as some of the tools that can be used to implement the DCP in Arizona. When we were developing these tools, we did kind of consider the technical analysis of the impacts that Ted just went through, and also the political realities of getting to the joint resolution that we need from the Arizona legislature in 2019. And we have focused on what we think is needed and possible within the next 8 meetings or so. Again, we've already covered this, but we are certainly interested in all of your ideas. Again, but we want the tools to be focused on mitigating, again, the differential impacts of the drought contingency plan and sustaining collaborative processes within Arizona. Again, the differential impacts of this plan on top of the 2007 guideline shortages, which are already in play when we get to those tier levels. And unless we do something here, they will be implemented in priority the way the left-hand column of Ted's slide showed. So to go through the elements one by one, the first is CAP ag mitigation. Again, the CAP ag pool faces reductions under the DCP, but receives limited benefits. And as we go through these, keep in mind each one of these topics requires significantly more definition and discussion than we know we have time to get to today. We will definitely work through each one of these with all of you and hear your ideas and concepts that emerge. Again, focusing on our ultimate objective and mission of the steering committee. And Ted mentioned earlier that a lot of this is not new. There's been discussion of these things for quite a while now within Arizona in various venues. The second one is tribal intentionally created surplus. Again, currently the non-Indian agricultural pool, as Ted said, is largely held by CAP tribes with settlements of their water rights. This tool can provide flexibility for the management of supplies provided from the settlements and also for on-river entitlements, folks who have the right to do ICS there as well. Next, a CAP excess water plan should try to continue the collaborative approach to achieving multiple benefits from the CAP excess water supply. The CAP excess water supply is the major contributor to the Tier 0 reductions. And again, that supply has historically gone to the replenishment district for the replenishment function performed by CAWCD, the Arizona Water Banking Authority, and to the federal government in part for their Indian firming obligations under the 2004 Water Settlement Act. So it is a very important pool to a large number of water users, and we need to address ways to deal with the loss of that water as well. And then last of the four major elements, an Arizona Conservation Plan, a new collaborative process to foster broader participation to help meet the DCP reductions. Ted mentioned a little bit before about the ability to conserve water, as system conservation or intentionally created surplus, and that creating some opportunities to help mitigate CAP ag or excess water or whatever we might decide to do, and whatever those who have that water and are doing the conservation would be willing to share and put together in a plan.
Tom?
Yes.
Can I quibble a little bit with the first bullet point? And I know this isn't time to really worry about drafting nuances, but the CAP Ag Pool faces reductions under the 2007 guidelines, something we recognize are not subject to any kind of mitigation plan. We face elimination under the Lower Basin Drought Contingency Plan. So I think that first bullet point kind of understates the problem for us a bit.
And again, not wanting to quibble, but there are also potential outcomes under the 2007 guidelines where the ag pool goes completely away as well. It's not just under the drought contingency plan. But again, we want to work through this to see if we can, again, mitigate those incremental impacts that would fall upon the ag pool if the drought contingency plan is put into place. And largely, that's what this process is about, including these other three elements. Go back again. So again, DWR and CAWC have identified the general contours of these elements, consistent with the ground rules we discussed earlier. We need additional definition and detail developed through this steering committee process. So we propose actually to start with CAP ag pool mitigation. We do believe, and we are very optimistic, Ted and I, that we can develop some of these collaborative agreements to meet the approaches and the goals that we've outlined, our shared objectives, and to avoid conflicts that have derailed our efforts in the past. We are proposing to start with the CAP ag pool mitigation and then follow up with tribal intentionally created surplus. And while DWR and CAP have not been involved, we are aware that there are some CAP ag mitigation discussions taking place among some parties, and we want to give them an opportunity to come back and share their progress if they desire, and we want to ask you to do that at the next meeting. We also want everyone to know that some tribal ICS discussions have been going on, and we intend to bring the results, or at least an update on where we are in that process, soon as we have an opportunity to work through some more of those issues. So that's kind of a preview of where we're going and what we think we can address early on in this process. Again, first focusing on CAP ag mitigation. I think that's indicative, Paul, in my mind, of what you described earlier as the bulk of the impacts occurring. And let's get right to it for probably the biggest issue, or at least the biggest impact in the near term, knowing, of course, that the NIA pool users are also heavily impacted by the DCP. But at least in the situation of the NI pool members, many of them have multiple resources, not just one resource like CAP Ag has, at least in terms of renewable water supplies. So
concerning ag pool, it would be helpful, I think, to see a breakdown of how much of the ag pool is in each of the AMAs. I think Pinal is roughly 75%, and the solutions that might work in Pinal could be significantly different, perhaps, than the Tucson and the Phoenix AMA. So if you could see maybe in one of the presentations coming forward would be helpful, I think.
And so, Bill, we will do that, keeping in mind that some of the creative solutions might involve shifting where the ag pool might end up, the physical molecules of Colorado in the ag pool might end up. And so just keep that in mind as we look at where the current percentages are in each active management area.
And that's a good suggestion. We will have that information next time because that's relevant to will be relevant to that discussion. And I'd like to also point out that the ag pool is currently at 300,000 acre feet. That is not being fully used. A large portion of it is being conserved under the now count them 5 ag conservation programs that we have going on. So that will provide that information as well, is that what's available, what's being used, what's being conserved by whom, where, all of that information, so that we have that for that conversation next time. Tom and I talked earlier about we had a break scheduled. It was much earlier in the agenda than where we're at right now. And we did have, it's not on the agenda, but we did have one optional thing that we wanted to do if time permitted. And I've got to tell you, it looks like time is going to permit. So what we will suggest now is that we take our scheduled break for, say, 15 minutes. People can use facilities, make phone calls. So let's be back at 25 after. But what we will do when we get back, and this optional thing is we are going to allow the delegates to have a few minutes, maybe spend a half an hour or so, and now that we've kind of set the table, to have any comments about what your expectations or goals might be for this process so that we can make sure that Tom and I and our staff anticipate that as we go forward. And then that will still leave us some time for the call to the public and public comment and next steps after we come back, okay? Thank you.
Testing. Test.
Testing 1 2. Yeah, just because. Testing 1 2. Yeah. So obviously.
Okay, folks, we're getting ready to start up again.
So let's do next steps first and then move to this delegate case. Is that all right?
Yep.
Chairman of San Carlos Tribe is here. We're writing his name and title down, which I'll bring that up to you in a few seconds. You might want to note his presence.
We will ask everyone to take their seats, including the delegates, because we'll be moving into an opportunity for the delegates to give their views.
Should be a judge or something.
Yell. It's a yell. I'm used to yelling at my kids. 20 years of yelling at my kids. Finally came in handy.
Yeah, right. Okay, thank you, everyone. Well, we're almost ready to go. Before we move to the delegate input and then a call to the public, well, let's just briefly cover the next steps. What happens after this meeting? I apologize for not doing this before. I draw your attention to the last line on the slide that's on the screen right now. That, yes, we do have Wi-Fi here, and we mentioned earlier that the materials are posted on the CAP and ADWR websites earlier, but we neglected to tell people what the password for the Wi-Fi network is here. I didn't even know this, but the Wi-Fi, it's called CAP Guest is the name of the network that'll show up on your phone or your computer, and the password is Fleet space Evolve space Tango. This just sounds like the CIA or something. It's kind of late in the meeting, but you can get those documents uploaded if you want to. Yes. Okay, thank you. So next steps. Our next meeting will be August 9th. As I mentioned earlier, the location is TBD, but we will have that nailed down as soon as possible. It won't be in some remote corner of the state somewhere. It'll be here in Maricopa County somewhere.
Somewhere near DWR.
Yeah. And what needs to happen between now and then is that, as we discussed earlier, delegates engaging with their constituents and vice versa to discuss what we've discussed today and get input on that. Because what we'd like to do at the next meeting is we'll have some space on the agenda to have any kind of dialogue that we need to have to answer questions or clear up any differences of opinion on those things next time. We've got a lot of questions since this whole process started and even before. When will the delegates and the public be able to look at the DCP documents? For a long time, we referred to the term sheet. The term sheet is being converted into real legal documents at this point in time, and that group has been working 2 days, full days a week of attorneys from among the three lower basin state organizations to get that done, and we will be seeking to get permission from that group to provide those documents as soon as possible, hopefully before the next meeting. At the next meeting, we hope to receive input from the delegates on the process to the extent we don't cover all of that today. Get a presentation on CAP ag mitigation from the group of delegates that have been working on that. As Tom mentioned earlier, there is more work, I think, just to do to prepare for that, so we may get a start on that and finish up at the meeting after that and have other topics to address at the next meeting as well. I did want to take a moment, too, to recognize another elected official who has joined us this afternoon. It's Terry Rambler, who's the chairman of the San Carlos Apache Tribe. Thank you for coming today. So let's move on now then to what we discussed before the break, we'd like a chance for the delegates to have a couple of moments to express any aspirations, hopes, goals, concerns about this process briefly, so that Tom and I can incorporate that into our planning for the next meeting and the next sessions. We would like to begin with the legislative representatives. I know we didn't give you a forewarning of that, but we'd like to start with the legislative representatives, and then we'll just continue around the circle going this way.
So we start with Rosanna?
No, I'll start. Okay. I should probably allow for seniority, so I would like to offer Senator Griffin the opportunity to speak first. So last year, there were several bills that came through the legislature, and I think we lost some very important time. Even though steps weren't taken to move what I would consider to be productive legislation forward, there was a lot of very good conversations. There was even more education done at the legislature between the two chambers. And that is something that I think is really, really imperative in order to move the DCP forward. We need to make sure that both of our chambers are well versed, how it affects their constituents, their legislative districts. So with that, I look forward to working with my colleagues on helping to educate the other legislators that may not be present or may be viewing this, because we all know when it comes to water, there's a lot of depth that needs to be captured when it comes to knowledge. So I look forward to presenting some solid legislation to move DCP forward in Arizona. I think it's imperative because Arizona has a fantastic history with water, and I would much rather we do it, and no offense, Leslie, better us than the feds. So with that, I look forward to working with the steering committee. Thank you.
I, too, am thankful for being here. And, yes, we had a lot of legislation, proposed legislation last year, but we're here for the DCP and want to concentrate on this issue. We're continuing our meetings throughout the state on the other issues that we have. Our next meeting is the 17th of August in Greenlee County, and we will continue that. But we're here right now on this very important issue, and I'm really pleased that the ag mitigation is number one on the list. I think that's really important, as others. So thank you.
Senna.
Thank you. I think it's very important. Well, it is important that we're here, and I'm very grateful that we are sitting at this table. But there is a lot of voices that are lacking around this table. So I'm hoping that as the steering committee moves forward, that we listen to all voices. And I'm so glad that these meetings are public. And as Senator Atondo had said, is bringing a very agreeable resolution to the legislature. When it comes to water policy, I would say that a lot of legislators need to be educated, and how important water is, and how when it comes to the DCP that we do come to not everyone's going to be satisfied, but I'm hoping that the majority of the concerns are talked about and are agreed upon, and that I'm very appreciative to Senator Griffin and Representative Bowers that they are going around the state of Arizona to listen to John Q. Public out there that is being impacted by our water sustainability. And I look forward to moving forward so that when the legislature does move in January, that we do have an agreement and that it is going to be bipartisan. Thank you.
Use my microphone. Hey, I'd like to thank the governor, and I'd like to thank Tom and Ted for implementing this forum again. I know you've made extreme efforts in the past to try to educate people to the situation. The challenge that I see for us not only is upgrading the educational level of the legislators to take these decisions, but that we have 15 new members coming into the House and probably a few senators the same. And so we are implementing an educational program to bring our House members up to speed and invite others who wish to be there as well. To start a 101, grateful to Gina and her help that way, and we invite anyone who wishes to be there to make sure that any necessary or critical information that they should be informed of can be given. I know the time will be very restricted, but we look forward to that, and to add that to what other comments have been said by our particular segment. We're very grateful to be involved, and we thank you, all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. On behalf of the business community, Glenn Hammer, Arizona Chamber of Commerce and Industry. In a past life, I worked for Senator Kyle, and he must have said about 1,000 times water's economic development. And I would echo the comments made earlier today. We'd much rather take action in the state of Arizona than to have the federal government take action. And this is a serious time. And I believe the state of Arizona should be very proud of itself. But I don't believe that there's a state in the country that has done more over the course of its history to prepare for difficult times. And we're in one of those periods right now. And our goal is to help our friends in the legislature however we can, so that we get a good and fair plan and resolution through the legislature. And we're going to continue our efforts to help educate the public, as well as assist in any efforts we can in terms of with the legislature, so that we could build the public support necessary to make sure that this is a successful process. And I just want to also conclude by saying I deeply appreciate the opportunity to participate in what I believe will be a historic effort. Thank you.
On behalf of the Central Arizona Project Board and the 3 counties that each of our 15 members of the board represent, and our staff, I am very happy that CAP is hosting this first meeting. We appreciate everyone being here, and it is important that I say for the record that we've long recognized, CAP has long recognized, the risk of shortage and have been proactive in our efforts as an organization to help reduce that risk. So we're pleased to be here rolling up our sleeves with everybody else. We think the time is right, and we appreciate everyone's efforts toward putting an agreement in place to address DCP. Thank you all.
And following on the heels of my fellow board member, Lisa, it's true that the CAP board fully supports the drought contingency plan. We are really grateful to have this conversation and start this work today. And it was noted, it's not starting the work because a lot of work has been done, but this is really a milestone day to bring everybody together. And so appreciate everybody coming here. And I will just observe that the energy and the good tone in this room is noticeable. And it's really important. I think it will lead us to a successful conclusion. And what's my expectation? My expectation is we will be successful. And this, the next few months ahead of us is going to be a lot of work, but I think everybody's here and ready. So I'm very optimistic, and again, appreciate everybody being here and look forward to working with everybody.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Hunter Moore. I represent Governor Doug Ducey on this committee. I'd first like to congratulate Tom and Ted for putting together such an impressive group of leaders. I believe right now there is a time that needs leadership, and we're very grateful to each one of you for stepping up. I know that each one of you will vigorously represent your interests and the constituencies that you have, and we encourage that. I would like to say a very special thank you to the legislators who have taken time to sit with Tom and Ted and to listen to what the situation currently is, to ask questions, and if there have not been appropriate answers, I'd like to also thank Tom and Ted for taking the time to go and get the information and to share it with us. I have had the privilege of attending several of the other meetings that take place aside from this group to work on DCP with staff from CAWCD, people from Arizona, engaging with the other basin states, with Mexico, with the federal government. There's a great benefit to working with them on this topic because it takes most of the intense pressure off of Arizona solely. It does give us some help. That is one of the best outcomes that can come from DCP, is that we have partnership from Mexico, we have partnership from California, we have partnership from some of the other basin states who can help alleviate what would be very difficult to do on our own. We at the governor's office recognize that that does not come without some difficulty for everyone. And we want to work through those topics and those issues as carefully, but also as quickly as we can. This is a very serious time. These are very serious issues that have not just come upon us all at once. We have been blessed with great foresight from our predecessors. And now is our opportunity together to take on some of these challenges which are unique to our time. We're very grateful for the work that has been done by both the organizations who are leading this. We will continue to engage with them. But thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to the next meeting.
I'm sure that many of you have had a chance to hear our Commissioner Brenda Berman speak both at the June 28th meeting and numerous other times about the importance of drought contingency planning. The Bureau of Reclamation is dedicated absolutely not only to contingency planning, but the proactive mitigation that's taken place so far and the proactiveness in the planning for the future results of drought in the basin. We are here in Arizona and proud to be a part of this process. We're committed to working with all of the stakeholders and the tribes specifically to help move this forward and to do anything we can to support you all throughout this.
I didn't realize that we were going to be included, but I guess that's okay because we called this whole thing together. I think it's pretty clear what our expectations are and what our hopes are. I agree with everything that's been said as far as the expectation and the vision for the outcome of the work that this committee will do is success. Tom and I have had many conversations about how to try and make that happen. And one key element for me of that is to recognize how much solution space that we do have. There's lots of room to do what we need to do to get this done, and to do that by avoiding staying out there in the margins where trouble is. We don't need to do that. There's lots of room in between those type of things, and that's where I plan to be. And I would encourage everyone else to have that same mindset, and we can do this work. It'll be hard, and it's a lot of work, but we can do it.
So I've done quite a bit of talking already, but I do just want to thank Ted and his staff for all the work that's gone into this process so far, and especially my own staff. You can probably imagine how much work this is, but unless you're sitting in the room for the many hours that this is happening, you probably don't really appreciate how much work goes into this, both from our staff and from Ted and his staff. So we are committed and to continuing to do that, and I know my staff is extremely committed to not having a life outside of DWR to make this happen.
Again, David Godleski, Southern Arizona Home Builders. I'm still trying to figure out how the seat assignments were made, and so my top priority is convincing a fellow steering committee member to take the seat to the right of the director. But in all seriousness, I want to thank DWR and CAP for bringing this steering committee together and for your leadership on this important issue. I'm honored to be a part of this process. There are a lot of great minds who are around the table, and I'm confident in the direction that we're going to go, and plan on being a positive contributor to this process. I think Glenn hit a very important point in talking about the role of water in economic development, and we're making a lot of progress in this state in terms of our economic recovery, and we also have done a tremendous amount to ensure that we have sound water management and policy in place. I know it was touched on before, but in looking at economic development and specifically the role of the GRD in helping advance our economy, I think that's going to be an important topic, especially when you're looking at the impact of the loss of excess water on the GRD. And so I look forward to a discussion and related to a plan for that, and certainly look forward to the future meetings and working with my fellow committee members.
Well, one thing I'd like to say for sure in starting out is, for one, being involved in this process, but two, thanking everyone that's here and sitting around this table, because obviously agriculture is not in a good spot. And without everyone's work here and everyone's involvement and willingness to come up with new ideas, if everybody were to walk away, we'd be stuck with what we have, which isn't very good. So agriculture is a $23 billion industry, and over 60% of the agriculture sales in our state survive off of this river, whether it's on river or off of CAP. And so we have a very, very vested interest in seeing some kind of successful outcome from this process. I think that for those of you that know folks in agriculture, we are generational thinkers. And so we are more than willing to be involved in this process and try to fix what's happening, because there is no agriculture without a healthy river and a healthy lake. And recognizing that we will feel some pain in this process, but again, thanking those of you that are willing to contribute ideas and different plans that can be put into place. Specifically for Farm Bureau, we have growers in Mojave County, La Paz County, Yuma County, Maricopa County, Pima County. And I think our goal specifically here is to be able to contribute to the agricultural discussion with all of our growers and all of our members, because we happen to have members that are of the utmost lowest priority and members that are at the absolute highest priority. And so that presents some challenges for us within the sector. But I feel confident that we'll be able to contribute to the discussion in a productive way. And I'm just very happy to be here. Thank you.
Okay. I, too, am very happy to be part of this process. As you know, the water bank has been, over the last 20 years, storing water underground to try to mitigate shortages, on the Colorado. And we've stored over 3.6 million acre-feet of water. But I think there's probably more the water bank can do to assist in this process, and I look forward to working with Bill and others on ideas for doing that. So, thank you.
I don't have comments, I have questions. Hi, Ted. For you first. What's different this time around than the last several years, and why should we feel optimistic about it going to happen?
What's different this time around is success. And I'm convinced that if we share that joint vision, that we will have it this time. I don't forget if it was Henry Ford or somebody else that said, or maybe it was Thomas Edison, or maybe both of them, about 10,000 things that you need to do first. I'm really screwing this up. The 10,000 times that you do something first is just a demonstration of the ways that it doesn't work, so that you can find the one that does. Maybe that's what we've got going on here.
One thing I remember about Henry Ford is he said, "You can have any color you want as long as it's black." Mr. Buchowski, what's different this time around? Why do you think we're going to be successful when we haven't been in the past and we failed pretty miserably?
So wait, a couple things. First, the size of this group and the broader representation across the state and with our legislators is something that was quite different than the last time. It's more of a ground-up process, from the ground up. Also, I think it is evident from the recent hydrology and information we've seen, some of it today, some of it in prior meetings, that the hammer is closer and closer to coming down on our heads, and we're closer and closer to the need to get this done. So I think that will help drive this process forward to a successful conclusion.
Thank you. Representative Bowers, what will have to be in a package that you can get through the House?
We're going to be in negotiations with Sonora to annex Yuma.
I think we'll prosper either way.
That's right. We both need you. That's the problem. We both need you.
What do we need to be in a DCP?
Well, I think the idea, and it's not like we haven't spent a lot of hours, not as many of you. And that is an absolute fact. Many of you have spent a lot of energy on this issue. But we represent 30 different districts and 2 different major parties and a lot of ideologies, but all of us have to drink water. And I think as we look through this, and it's been heartening to see a recognition that all parties are going to have to take a little pain, rather than one party gets pain and it's out the window, and then the next party gets pained as the rate gets lower. So that there is a spreading of the challenge among everyone, among all parties, but also a recognition that all parties have an importance. I mean, the supervisor from Mojave, they have very important interests as well. And the rural Arizona, as we are finding out, have very unique challenges that we never talk about, but that their membership will be representing. So as we recognize, both in our traveling show and as this committee works with all parties, as we recognize that everyone has an interest, everybody has an importance, and there has to be a balance that we're striving for, and as close as we can get to that balance, the better success we have. If it's imbalanced, it's pretty hard to sell.
Thank you. Senator Griffin, what do you think we need to do in order to get a package that can get through the Senate?
I think the members sitting around the table have a lot to contribute. One size doesn't fit all, and what we do has to be a win-win with everybody given a little bit. And I think the momentum is there. I think the interest is there. We can have a good, sound environment, and we can have a healthy economy at the same time. It all balances out with water, however. And I think just the participation and the openness will go a long way this time.
Thank you very much. Paul?
Are you asking me that same question, or am I on my own?
I yield the balance of the meeting to you.
Paul Lorm, Pinell County Agriculture. I'm frankly much more optimistic this time for several reasons. One, as I certainly applaud the efforts of the joint efforts of the department and CAP to work together to find solutions. I always felt that was an absolute requirement to solve the ag mitigation issue, which is, of course, my primary issue. We need both agencies. We need the people in both agencies working in the same direction. And so I'm optimistic that that's what we have. Secondly, I appreciate the fact that the ag mitigation issue has been elevated to a seemingly prominent position in these discussions. I don't think that had occurred before. So I'm grateful for that. This issue is critically important to the livelihoods of over 300 farm families in Pinell County, and they face an imminent threat, not a long-term threat. They face an imminent threat, and not only those families, but frankly, the economy of Pinell County as well, if this thing goes wrong. So, I applaud the way this effort is starting. I think it is substantially different than what we've seen in the past, and I'm cautiously optimistic.
Lois Wakimoto, Mojave County, and I am grateful to be here to represent, as Representative Bowers said, special needs of all the different areas. As we talk about economic development, I am glad that we are considering economic development of all the counties and everything that we can do to continue to produce that.
Joe Olson in Metro Water District. Arizona's long history of water leadership has continued to be enriched with various collaborative and innovative solutions among all sectors. One of the most recent ones that I'm sure many of you are aware of is the inter-AMA firming agreements between the City of Tucson and the City of Phoenix and Metro Water. It's my hope that these exact type of innovative and collaborative solutions is what will be used to address the four essential elements that were discussed today. And I am very optimistic of this positive outcome, not just because the professionals and leadership around this table, not just because the joint leadership of Ted and Tom, but because the interest and all the expertise that's in the audience and those who are watching remotely at home. I believe that this will be hopefully a holistic approach to address these multiple and varied needs, and I'm privileged to serve on this committee. Thank you.
Bill Garfield, Arizona Water Company. I'm going to sound like I'm actually representing the agriculture sector here when I told you earlier I was representing the municipal sector, but I've been around long enough to know what life was like before CAP. Down in Pinell, it was not a good situation in the early 80s before CAP was introduced. I really don't want to see what it would be like without having CAP delivered to that area. So I think if we are able to resolve and mitigate in large part the impact of DCP on agriculture, I think we will be also resolving some of the joint impacts to the municipal side, the development side of the business that I represent. And if we're not able to solve that, we all share the same water supplies in all of our areas. Probably the effects of this, if we're not able to resolve the impacts on ag, I think Pinell will feel it more than other areas. The governor's group over the past year, of which I was part of, spent considerable time trying to deal and find solutions to water supply issues that we face that could hinder growth and development of the state and certainly our service areas. So I really do think it's important for us, critically important for us to resolve these issues sooner rather than later. And I do think there's a tremendous need to do that. I thank Tom and Ted for assembling the steering committee. I'm honored to be part of this, and will certainly provide all efforts that I can to find solutions for the problems we face. Thank you.
Troy Day with Epcor Water. We are here as one of the many M&I subcontractor entities, and I'm very comfortable to say that we believe ag is also important. The discussions that go forward from this point can't be us versus them. It can't be the haves versus the have-not. I believe we have all the tools at our disposal to mitigate some of the impacts of the DCP. Epcor very much agrees with the importance of the DCP and implementing the DPC, and I just stand here committed to being part of the solution.
Javier Sedovich with the City of Goodyear. So I just want to echo some of the things that have been said, but maybe add a little bit more. I mean, we're really here to contribute to the economic vitality of Arizona as well as its sustainability. And one of the things that just jumped at me as I looked at some of the graphs is that if we take the stand of protecting some special interests along the way, all we're going to do is really create some sort of temporary success for different sectors. But overall, it is eminent that the failure will be common. So we're here to, I think, make it work for all of us.
Kathy Rawl with the City of Scottsdale, and the City of Scottsdale is very honored to be a part of this group as well. And we, as part of the Valley municipalities, know the importance of DCP and of all of us coming together and getting a solution and having that settled across the board with all of us feeling a bit of the pain, but all of us being successful in this. Thank you.
Tim Tom, your Tucson Water. I would also like to thank you for including us, and especially thank you for the thoughtful inclusion of significant representation from Southern Arizona. This is a very refreshing look around the room, and I want to commend you for doing so, and we'll do our best to honor that with reaching solutions. I do want to take one step back to the ground rules. In order to fully commit to those ground rules, I want to mention one thing. You know, with the focus on issues related to getting DCP done, I can fully commit to that, but I would like to caution us that when we declare victory on the DCP, our work is not done in the water space. There are significant groundwater issues in the state. There are significant issues related to reclaimed water and effluent. Many of those issues will still need to come to the legislature, and we're not engaging in a thorough discussion of that at this time. So I can set aside those issues and go all in on DCP, but I can't set them aside for long. And I'd just like to caution us all that we're going to be right back here talking about the next steps. I would say that the bright side of that is when we have some more tools, flexibility, and certainty related to reclaimed water or effluent and groundwater, it enables the implementation of the agreements that we're going to come to. So when we are at this table and we're agreeing to certain things related to the Colorado River, it's with the hope and understanding that there will be tools in the toolbox to help us step up to the plate. I will close with saying that Tucson Water is happy to host any of these sessions in the future.
Hello, Laura Grignano. I am honored and greatly appreciative to be representing the CAGRD on this committee. As you all know, the CAGRD plays a vital role in the state's community and economic development, and as well as Arizona's groundwater management. The GRD does rely on excess water as well as pending NIA supplies that will be significantly impacted by DCP. But I am confident that this process will provide creative partnerships to move the state forward on this important issue. Thank you.
Shane Leonard, Roosevelt Water Conservation District. I had some wonderful comments prepared, and then Wade had to turn it into a deposition. This is going to be fun. The idea, first and foremost, is I want to thank CAP and DWR for doing this. I think I can speak for most of the folks in the room, recognize it hasn't been an easy path for you folks as of late. And so on behalf of RWCD and our folks, I'd like to thank you for putting that aside and getting this done. I'd also like to thank the Bureau for being willing to work with us. And I'm going to probably use some bad grammar here, but not to us is probably the best way to put it. I'd also like to thank Senator Griffin and Representative Bowers for their listening sessions over the last several months. In particular, and for those of you who know me, I will crow the great things Arizona has done for water, but what we have been abysmal on is informing the public to keep them aware of what's happening and what's going on, and I think that will be of critical importance to this. I want to echo some of what has already been said, in particular with regards to Tim's comments about I believe the goal of this obviously is an effective DCP. But I think this group, similar to what we did out of a number of other different venues, the Gila River Indian Community Water Rights Settlement, allow us to address some very significant long-term planning that needs to be done when this is resolved. And personally, I really like the seating arrangement. Whether Governor Lewis might realize it or not, one of my earliest memories was being a part of the Gila settlement, sitting behind my father and his father as they negotiated a number of significant issues. And with that, I would like to again thank the group for recognizing the critical role of the Native American communities and their need to be involved in the process. For those of you who might be asking, what is RWCD doing here? Yes, there is still agriculture in Maricopa County. We also provide water to residential, industrial, and municipal users, and if I'm not mistaken, we'll be approaching close to 1 million acre-feet of water stored on behalf of a plethora of partners. And with that, thank you for allowing us the opportunity to be here, and we look forward to both a constructive and a respectful process. Thank you.
Governor Stephen Earl Lewis, the Gila River Indian Community. The community is very pleased to be here at this table. And as the largest entitlement holder for water from the Colorado River delivered through the CAP, the community is deeply concerned, of course, with this issue of shortage. And we are listening, and we will participate actively in the coming meetings to see if there is some way to support DCP moving forward. Thank you, everyone.
Cheryl Lombard, Valley Partnership. On behalf of our members, but also our industry, which is not just home building, it is also the commercial and industrial development. We are investing in the future of Arizona. Our members have hundreds of thousands of acres across the state. We're sitting here very concerned about excess water, the future of CAGRD, but we're also very excited to have our legislators and as well the future of our Native Americans and the future of our state. I do have one question, which Ted and I talked about earlier, was just some more detail on the Arizona Conservation Plan. So maybe at the end, if you can say what you said to me during the break, that would be helpful.
I'm Ted Maxwell with the Southern Arizona Leadership Council. I'm going to echo a lot of the comments that were already made, and so I'll keep it short. One is thank you to both the department and to CAP for pulling us all together. The representation around this table is truly representative of all of Arizona from a regional perspective as well as from the different sectors that we're representing. So to me, it's all about collaboration. Everybody's got the right attitude here. We've got to and I'm not going to focus on us coming up with a solution that's a win-win. I'm going to focus on what's going to be the lose-lose, and that's if we can't come to a collaboration. The time is now, and when it comes to getting it through the legislature, Mr. Noble, I think the best way to do it is to walk out of here with an agreement that we all are passionate about. You look around this room, there's plenty of people involved that will help us carry it then, and it's our responsibility not only to come up with the best way forward, but then to help carry it through the legislature. Our legislator is always open and listens to us. And the more we talk to them, the more we can tell them how strongly we believe in what we come with. I'm not worried about it getting through the legislature at the end of the day. So I'm really honored to be part of this organization. And again, thank you for opening up the collaboration a little bit broader to cover all Arizonans.
I am Dennis Patch, Chairman of the Colorado Tribes. It's nice to be invited here and participate in this for all the important water issues in Arizona. And it's important to know reservations are in Arizona too, and we have all the same problems that everyone else has. Tribes don't usually get invited to these type of meetings. I think it would be good if they do, because I think tribal water is part of the solution, and I think everyone needs to acknowledge that in some way. And we have two goals for our participation in this. One's to protect our water rights on the reservation, and we want to have a sustainable economy like everyone's talking about here, no matter who you're representing. We want that to do that with our water. And we're glad we're here. We're one of the few entities that can actually bring water to you and everyone here. And so we believe our participation in discussions will help the state of Arizona, the water users in the state of Arizona, and also help our tribal goal of having a sustainable economy too, much like all the rest of you you're talking about. So thank you for inviting us.
Again, Anthony Francisco from the Tohono O'odham Legislative Council, sitting in for Chairman Edward Manuel of the Tohono O'odham Nation. I just wanted to highlight one of the proposed sideboards, and Chairman Patch had alluded to, and that is and I'll read off from this, the proposed sidebars. Operate within it and respect existing legal authorities, contracts, and priorities. And I believe it really speaks to the settlements that have been negotiated, when tribes fought long and hard to try to replenish their lands. And today, some settlements are still pending. Some settlements still haven't reached full appropriations. Therefore, hopefully moving forward, we respect these trust responsibilities. They're very important. As tribes, we see them beyond contracts and agreements. But with that being said, tribes understand the importance of water or lack thereof, and hope to continue this working dialogue. I too want to thank you for allowing tribes. I know not all tribes are here. I believe there's just a little over 10% of the tribes represented here. However, there are those tribes that are in the audience for sitting at the table. As mentioned, through these settlements, tribes did fight long and hard to try to get their seat at the table. So thank you for inviting us. Then in closing, I would just concur with the comment of any meetings hosted in Tucson. We definitely would like to be there.
I don't know about the meetings in Tucson. Just kidding. Thank you very much for bringing us all together. We really appreciate it. And I'm very hopeful for this process, that it is an equitable process and that we can look at all sides. I also wanted to focus on the proposed sideboard, the similar one, the operate within and respect existing legal authorities, contracts, and priorities. While I agree that is important and we have to recognize particularly our tribal settlements, those are long and hard fought for. I think the settlements that we do have are very important to this process. The tools using tribal ICS and many of the other tools are going to be very critical to getting across that finish line in a successful way, like you sort of outlined, Ted. But I think we also have to be willing to look within those existing authorities to actually get to the end of this. I think there might be some very important, including federal and state authorities, that we really need to look at CAP priorities or CAP policies that I think we're going to have to look really hard at so that we can get to the end. And I appreciate, again, everybody being here, our tribal representatives specifically. Appreciate the federal government and the state and CWCD and our legislators and all the rest of us schmucks for hanging out here. One last thing, being apparently the only industrial representative, thanks a lot. I think we're going to have to, I just wanted to point out that we will be looking to create a subcommittee to get the input from our industrial partners. So I guess I have another job, and hopefully I've been talking with Glenn to see how we might be able to do that through the chamber. So I appreciate your help. Actually, Richard will be doing it.
Good afternoon. Ted Kowalski with the Walton Family Foundation. And again, thank you for including us and including the NGO community in this conversation. At the Walton Family Foundation, we try to take on some of the most difficult social and environmental issues facing the country and the world. And the Colorado River is one of those challenges. And so I come here today with a slightly broader perspective, both in terms of scope, because we are trying to ensure a healthy Colorado River for the entire Colorado River Basin, but also we have a higher or broader perspective in terms of time scale, because we're working on problems that take 10 or 20 or 30 years to solve, and the Colorado River is no exception. That being said, on behalf of the NGO community, we're pleased to be part of this conversation, and we're pleased to see CAP and the state together convening this group. And I think that's a critical change from the last time around, Wade. I mean, I think you have both leaders coming together and saying this is too important to fail, and I think that's great. With regard to our perspectives on the Colorado River Basin, I believe, and I think we believe at the Walton Family Foundation, that the solutions lie in not failing any one geographic area or any one sector, including the environmental sector. We have to find solutions that work for all geographies and for all sectors, and I think that's true for the state of Arizona as well, and I'm pleased to see so many different sectors and geographies represented here today. I want to echo the points that Hunter made a little while ago and just remind you that you are not alone, that there is an entire basin that is dependent on your success or failure. And the fact that Mexico and California have both voluntarily agreed to take reductions that they're not required to under the law is an important and critical factor that I ask you to consider as you try to work your way through these very difficult problems. And with that, I'm actually out of the Denver office of the Walton Family Foundation, so I'm happy to bring you guys all up to Denver during the summer months if you're so inclined. Thank you.
But you're not here on behalf of the Upper Basin, are you?
No, from the entire basin.
Dave Roberts on behalf of SRP, and I'd like to thank Tom and Ted for inviting SRP to be a part of this, part of the committee. We look forward to working with you all and the rest of the committee. We support DCP. Throughout our history, we've been involved in a lot of innovative solutions on water matters in this state. Been partners in a lot of different programs as well, and we look forward to helping out wherever we can to bring solutions and to hear other people's ideas and provide insight into that. So we look forward to helping out. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. Thank you, everyone, for all those great comments and encouragement. Just listening to all of that and helps me to be comfortable with the selections that we've made. And so we've got some great people sitting at the table. We've got some great people sitting in the audience, and we're going to hear from you next. So your patience will be rewarded. We now have so just some logistical things first. We have some staff with a couple of microphones that are available. So you can raise your hands and be recognized by the chair. That will be Tom who will pick you, so that you can address your questions to the committee. If members of the public have any questions about what was discussed today that we don't get to today because of lack of time or you didn't think of the question that you wanted to ask, we ask each of you to reach out to, I guess I need to change the slide, reach out to one of your delegates that represents your sector or any delegate, or contact our respective public information officers. Those names, email addresses are listed on the slide up there. For the media, as we discussed at the press conference at the end of the June 28th meeting, please reach out to the CAWCD or ADWR PIOs listed on the slide. And Tom and I will make ourselves available for joint interviews as we've been doing for the last couple of months. We found that to be very effective in practice for us. While we still have about a half an hour left today, I'd like to thank everyone for coming in advance. I'd like to thank everyone who asked a question this afternoon for coming and being patient to wait to the end to ask your questions. So we're ready to go. Please raise your hand.
I see no hands being raised, so I would ask the legislators to recognize that everyone must be in agreement. We're ready to go. No questions, comments from our public participants? Yes, sir. Would you please identify yourself as well and the organization you represent? That would be helpful.
Certainly. Chairman and members of the committee, my name is Adam Andrews, and I'm from Thornton Nation of the Sanibel District, wherein we have allotted land, and we have an organization called the Sanibel Allottees Association, which I serve as the vice president to. I just want to echo the statement made by our council member here representing the tribe, in that the legal authorities that lie within existing statutes and settlements are important to us. And I want to also just, remind those in the legislature that the tribes have certainly played a lot of emphasis in trying to get to the point where those settlements were reached. And to come to this stage is yet another, level of discussion, level of legal minds to come together to come to solution. And we certainly appreciate being asked to be a part of the committee. So I want to thank you for that. The other is that in Sanibel District, in our land development there at Thornton, is agriculture. So we also share some sentiment in terms of the agriculture that is being discussed here at the table. So I want to just make mention of that, and those are my comments here today. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, I'm Kerry Meister, and although I am active on the steering committee of the Sustainable Water Working Group, I am not speaking on its behalf. I am speaking on my own behalf. As you know, we requested to be on the committee and were turned down, and we were advised to contact our sector representative for our specific interests. However, as I look at this committee, however distinguished it is and how broadly representative it is, it still does not, to me, represent environmental interests. And therefore, I'm at a bit of a quandary as to whom to address on this committee with environmental concerns, because I just don't feel that we're being represented.
So there perhaps might be opportunities with individual issues that you have to look around the room, but to pick on my friend Ted, I think Ted is your main contact in general for the NGO community.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. I guess I would be happy to talk to you afterwards and want to make sure that the environmental interests are represented here and in this conversation, to be sure. And in fact, there's already been one NGO organization that submitted comments specifically to Tom and to Ted and to myself, and related to groundwater. And I think echoing the comments of my colleague Tim, I think we want to make sure that this process, while it cannot solve every single problem facing the state of Arizona, that it protects the integrity of the Groundwater Management Act that exists, to be sure. And I'm certainly happy to talk to you afterwards, and we do want to represent your interests.
Others? No one wants to get up and offer water or money to the mitigation plan at this point in time? Ted.
Yes, maybe I could take a moment while folks are thinking of a question to ask and address Ms. Lombard's question from earlier, and I certainly would invite Tom to add to my comments here. And the question specifically was, what is this Arizona Conservation Plan thing? Of the four essential elements, ag mitigation, excess water plan, tribal intentionally created surplus, or ICS, and the Arizona Conservation Plan. This is my view of it, but I think it overlaps a lot with what Tom's is. Not that we differ, it's just there's lots of area that's covered by that. And that maybe is the main point. Those three specific tools, the first three that I mentioned, ag mitigation, excess water, and tribal ICS, are tools for conserving water and leaving water in Lake Mead in an effort to meet our obligations under DCP and maybe do some other things as well. And those will fit into the broader Arizona Water Conservation Plan. The plan includes everything else, in my mind, that we might do to be able, in addition to those three tools, that we would be able to do to help us achieve the goals of implementing DCP. And it also includes what I believe is a process that we would employ as well for how do we remain sustainable and flexible throughout the period that DCP will be in place. There are certain things that happen during the year, the August 24-month study, that will determine whether or not and what the shortage will be the following year. And orders need to be finalized before the end of the year. What process do we follow to bring that together and make sure everybody is on the same page in a way that will incorporate the three discrete and any other tools that we identify, and quote unquote what else we need to do, particularly as we had moved, say, from a tier 1 to a tier 2 shortage, then our obligation is going to be a lot higher next year than what we've managed to do the year before that. That's what the Arizona Conservation Plan is an umbrella that fits all those, the ones that we can identify and the ones we haven't thought of yet, and a process to integrate all of that thing into a sustainable tool for us to carry this out over an extended period of time.
And I'll just add, Ted, the Arizona Conservation Plan will also, as one of its elements, look at what we can do to prop up the lake. Maybe in the near term, it's still possible to prop up the lake and keep it above 1075. Maybe not, depending on how the hydrology plays out. Depends on how much water we need to do that. And then we may target, if the lake keeps dropping despite our efforts, looking at other target elevations where shortage volumes would increase to Arizona and targeting some conservation to avoid those outcomes. So it can be a lot of different things. And one of the challenges, and Ted alluded it with the water ordering process, is the timing of folks who have the water and who might conserve it, and how it works for them to plan on whether they're going to use the water directly or conserve it is a key element of the conservation plan, and a huge challenge given that the reclamation makes their operational decision in August, water order process non-tribal October, tribal November. Try to put something together in that short time period is going to be very challenging, but it will be part of all the discussions of the Arizona Conservation Plan. So I see we have another question.
Yes, only a statement, but my name is Terry Ramler. I'm the chairman of the San Carlos Apache Tribe, Southeast Arizona, located between Globe and Sapper. And the reason I'm here is I'm interested in what's going to develop from this committee, because we have a lot at stake from our end too. I'm beginning to understand that most of the people are sitting around this table in the steering committee are the ones that are going to be affected the most, because most of you have lower priorities. And we are in the higher priority category. And so with Central Arizona Project Water, so I just want to make sure about that, even though I see my friend
Colorado River Indian tribe, Dennis Miggs, who I understand has the highest priority of all of us in this room. And but I want to make sure that the process going forward follows what I heard earlier, that the existing laws and the priorities and the contracts that are in place. We have a contract we have a CAP contract. We've had it since 1980. That those stay in place. That they are not rearranged in any way as you guys go through this process. I just want to let my wishes be known on that one. So thank you.
Thank you. Another hand being raised. Dan.
Dan Thielander, I'm a farmer in Pinal County, and I'm not going to say anything about ag mitigation, although obviously that's what my big concern is. But there's a large group of water leaders here, and Ron Rayner, who I think some of you know, sent me an email, and it was relating to the plans to build, the potential plans to build a pumping station to recycle Lake Mead water to use Hoover Dam as a storage bank for power to circulate water back and forth using solar power to pump it. But in that email, which I have not confirmed, but he said that California in the last 22 months has let 56 million acre feet of water flow out into the Pacific Ocean. 56 million acre feet. We're all Arizonans here, and we're talking about 10,000 acre feet, 100,000 acre feet. And California has done 56 million acre feet has flowed out, a lot of it under the Golden Gate Bridge. So my friends from the environmental community, sir, from the Walton Foundation, maybe the Walton Foundation could get behind an effort to try to figure out how to protect the fish in a reasonable way, but not let 56 million acre feet flow out into the Pacific Ocean, while we in Arizona are struggling to figure out how to keep using 1.6 million acre feet a year. So it's a little off the subject, but there's a big group here, and nobody was jumping at the mic, so I thought I'd throw it out there.
So again, Dan, as you mentioned, you understand it's a little bit tangential, but one of the things over the past 5 years, as I've been working with the other states on what's now DCP, that's become evident, is that we are linked into issues across the basin in ways that have not always been evident, and the sustainability in California and how Northern California and Southern California fit together, and issues like the one that you raised certainly bring home that we are linked in ways and we are connected in ways, and the DCP is a step in recognizing that linkage and having collaborative efforts to deal with, at least in the Lower Basin DCP, Lake Mead, in a way, as several have spoken so far today, that shares some of the burdens and doesn't totally put the burdens on the state of Arizona exclusively. Any others? Seeing none, I'll thank all the members of the committee and members of the public for attending, and we look forward to seeing you all on August 9th. Thank you.